You possess the aesthetic of a squatter who found a silk scrap in a dumpster. And quite frankly, your presence is an atmospheric toxin in this room. This mezzanine is reserved for the architects of heritage, not for a social parasite hoping to catch the scent of a real bank account. Descend to the street level before I have the staff treat you like the infestation you are. Reginald Sterling didn't just speak. He projected a high society venom that felt as though it had been aged in an oak barrel. He stood in the center of the classic grand rotunda of the Sterling Plaza, an environment of suffocating opulence. Floor-to-ceiling white marble, gilded iron railings, and a massive, tiered crystal chandelier that hummed with the electric ego of the room. Reginald stood with his hands tucked into his pinstripe waistcoat, his palms empty, staring with absolute disdain at the woman standing by the balcony. The woman was Zora Thorne, a woman with deeply pigmented mahogany skin and a quiet authority that seemed to make the marble under her feet feel like a throne. She was dressed in a sculptural emerald green silk gown with a structured cape. New outfit. "I am here to oversee the $2.2 billion asset transition," Zora said, her voice a low, melodic resonance that seemed to anchor the entire room. "I suggest you check the morning's regulatory filings before you continue this performance. The only filing you're suited for is a police report for trespassing," Reginald interrupted, his voice rising in a calculated escalation of disdain. "Look at this celebration. Look at my family. We are the builders of the horizon. You are a visual blemish in a green dress. You don't belong at a $2.2 billion celebration. You belong at the service entrance, waiting for a bus that never comes. Security, purge this error from my sight before the Real guests arrive." The rotunda didn't fall silent. It filled with the sharp, jagged laughter of the surrounding Sterling elite. Reginald's son, Alastair, leaned against a marble pillar, smirking at Zora with clinical, high-society disdain. "Honestly, father," Alastair laughed, swirling a glass of 50-year-old cognac, "she's very committed to the role. Asset transition. Maybe she's the new upholstery inspector here to check the drapes? Someone should tell her that the Sterling legacy is bought with blood and history, not with whatever ambition she thinks she has." The woman beside him joined in, pointing a manicured finger at Zora's emerald gown. "I'll give her $200 to go stand in the rain and hold my fur wrap. She looks like she's built for the outdoor labor anyway. Go on, Reginald. Clear the air before the atmosphere becomes common." 12 people in the background were ostensibly minding their business, adjusting their diamond cufflinks or checking gold pocket watches, but 8 others were acting as active witnesses, leaning in to catch every second of the humiliation with judgmental grins. "Thanks for the support. We couldn't do this without you. Subscribe for free to help us keep bringing you more stories. Where are you watching from? Drop your city and country in the comments." Now, back to the story. Reginald, emboldened by the social jury, took the escalation to its peak. In a moment of raw, unposed physical aggression, he didn't just point. He grabbed the tray of hors d'oeuvres from a passing waiter and smashed it onto the marble floor at Zora's feet, then grabbed her arm to shove her toward the stairs, his face twisted in a mask of vicious mockery. "I said get out," Reginald hissed. "I'm calling the authorities to have this commoner removed for harassment." The laughter in the rotunda was a physical weight. Zora didn't flinch. She didn't scream. She slowly pulled her arm back, smoothing the emerald silk of her cape, her eyes meeting Reginald's with a coldness that caused the room's warmth to vanish. "You've spent your life thinking a surname on a skyscraper makes you the owner of the air, Reginald," Zora whispered, the coldness in her tone causing the witnesses' laughter to die instantly. "But you forgot that a building is just collateral, and I am the one who holds the note. You didn't just shove a guest. You just assaulted the CEO of Thorne Equity, the firm that took possession of this entire property and its $2.2 billion trust at midnight. And as of this second, I'm seizing this celebration." The air in the rotunda turned to ice as Zora Thorne's words hung in the space like a guillotine blade. Reginald Sterling stood frozen, his hands still mid-shove, his face draining of color until it matched the white marble floors. The massive, tiered crystal chandelier above flickered, reflecting the sudden, violent shift in the room's power structure. Thorne, equity, Reginald's voice cracked, the high society sneer dissolving into a frantic, stuttering whisper. No, Thorne Equity is a private fund. They're ghosts. You can't be Zora Thorne. I am the ghost that just repossessed your life. Reginald, Zora said, her melodic resonance filling the room like a tolling bell. I flew in to see if the Sterling family had the dignity required to remain as minority partners. It turns out you don't even have the dignity to be human. The heavy mahogany doors at the entrance burst open. A fleet of men in black suits entered, led by the Sterling family's own chief financial officer, Marcus Vane. Marcus didn't look at Reginald. He walked straight to Zora and bowed so low his forehead nearly touched the gilded railing. Madam Chairwoman, Marcus whispered, the seizure is complete. The $2.2 billion in celebratory funds has been diverted to the Thorne Foundation. The locks on the penthouse have been changed, and the Sterling name is being removed from the building's facade as we speak. The silence in the rotunda was now a physical vacuum. The man in the smoking jacket who had mocked Zora's upholstery dropped his cognac glass. It shattered on the marble, the sound of his family's future breaking in half. The 8 witnesses who had been howling with laughter were now scrambling for the exits, terrified that Zora's gaze would fall on them next. Reginald, Zora said, her quiet authority silencing the room. You were celebrating a legacy that no longer exists. You're a tenant in my building now. And as your landlord, I find your behavior to be a breach of the moral conduct clause in your eviction stay. You have 10 minutes to clear your personal items from this mezzanine before my security team treats you like the infestation you mentioned.
No, Alistair screamed, rushing forward. You can't do this. This is our history. Your history is a bad debt that I just settled, Zora countered, her eyes like cold flint. And as for the architects in the audience, she turned her gaze toward the witnesses. Every account holder here who found humor in Mr. Sterling's assault will have their business loans reviewed for reputational risk by morning. I don't lend money to bullies. The 8 witnesses scrambled, their faces masks of raw, irreversible regret. The woman who had offered $200 for Zora to hold her fur wrap was now weeping, her social standing evaporating in real time. Marcus, Zora said, turning back to the CFO. Call the sheriff. Since Reginald saw fit to assault me in front of 20 witnesses, he'll be spending the first night of his poverty in a cell. As the police entered the rotunda, the 12 people who had been minding their business watched in stony silence. Reginald was led away in handcuffs, his screams of, "Do you know who I am?" echoing off the marble walls. Zora Thorne walked to the center of the rotunda, looked up at the massive crystal chandelier and signaled the staff. "Turn off the lights," she commanded. "The Sterling era is over."